Good afternoon, everybody. This is First Warn Storm Team Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich here in Charlotte, North Carolina. wxbrad online at Twitter, Facebook, as well as my blog. I want to give you an update on what's going on with Isaac. Now Isaac is about to enter the Gulf of Mexico through the Florida Straits. The storm is actually looking very well organized here in the last couple of hours. Not that the southern side looks that great, but if you look carefully here on the loop, you can see the center or the eye trying to reform an eye wall. And if you look over Cuba, a couple of interesting things to note over Cuba. I'm going to draw on here when it pauses for a second. If you notice these cloud streaks coming in like this is a sign that the inflow is increasing on the southeast side. The problem is it's crossing some mountainous terrain and basically the dry land of Cuba, so the moisture hasn't caught up. But once the center gets up over here in the southeastern Gulf, it's going to be pulling over lower elevation land here in western Cuba, and it's going to have a deeper fetch of moisture. So I expect the southeastern side of the storm to really probably perk up in the next, I would say, 5 to 6 hours. Key West and the Keys getting hammered with heavy rain and tropical storm force winds. Likely hurricane force winds are going to be likely in the Florida Keys, as well as all of southern Florida. You see that pink box? That is a tornado watch, which is up through this afternoon. Let me actually see. I think it goes through this evening. If I look at the watch box itself, the watch actually is in effect until 5 p.m., but count on that being extended into the overnight hours. I'm going to throw on I'm going to pause it here quickly, and I'll throw on the latest Hurricane Center forecast. They have the circulation there moving to the north and west as a Category 2 into the Mississippi Gulf Coast, but there's chances it could shift even further west. So this is the latest spaghetti plot, we call it, the model track. If you look carefully here in the first couple of hours, right through 48 hours, in fact, very good agreement in the models. It's right when it gets up in here that you see this huge spread in the model guidance. And that's an indication of a couple things. A lot of uncertainty here, but also you start maybe getting into a situation where the steering currents weaken or you have multiple influences on the storm. So up in here, you start getting into big global synoptic scale type stuff that's going to influence. But either way, you can clearly see what's going on here with the consensus. It's right along the Mississippi, Louisiana Gulf Coast and right near the mouth of the Mississippi River, let's be honest. So if I lived in New Orleans right now, I'd be very, very cautious of what's going on with this storm. There's a chance it could become stronger than it's forecasted right now. It's expected to be a Category 2 in this region, but you got to remember it's going to pass over some really warm water. As it gets up into this region in here, you're talking about the potential for a Category 2, but certainly there's an outside chance this could get even stronger, possibly major Category 3 status, and mainly because if you look up here in the northeast Gulf of Mexico, a couple things are going on here. We've got a couple warm eddies. One looks to be right here, another one in here, and there's a weaker one up here. And what these are deep, deep warm water that's cut off from the loop current, which comes in here and does one of these things and then loops back out. That's what they call it, the loop current. But these little eddies spin up, and as the storm tracks up towards Louisiana, it could cross over the southeastern one and maybe this one near the mouth of the Mississippi River, and then you're talking about strengthening dramatically. High-res imagery from the wharf shows the circulation center going right up the mouth of the Mississippi River, but here in the Carolinas, something I'm watching is there's a big plume of tropical moisture on the eastern side. As well, it looks like a little upper low or a trough or something here that may enhance rainfall chances here in the Carolinas. Remember, the moisture flow is going to be like this. Remember, there's also an old frontal boundary that's going to be in here, so we may get the good old squeeze play, which could produce heavy rain well to the east of the center. So even though the center is shifting to the west, I wouldn't drop your guard for the flood potential in other parts of the southeast. GFS model has done the best so far with this system. I'm going to stick with it right now, and the circulation it has going right near Grand Isle, Louisiana, essentially. If you look at this as a Category 2, outside chance Category 3, you can see the wind speeds here, 108 to 115. There's a small section there in an odd spot on the west side, but you see the whole northern eye wall is up around 100 miles per hour. So as we watch the storm here over the next couple of days, if you live anywhere on the Gulf Coast, and I mean anywhere, I'm talking about from even Houston, Texas, down to Galveston, those areas, I would still be taking this storm very seriously, basically all through here. because Florida obviously impacted today. Big swells, surf, and likely some strong winds and some heavy rain. This area right in here, primarily what I'm talking about, landfall. Doesn't matter where the specific line is. This whole area would likely have some huge impacts. So I wish we had more to tell you. The good news is in the short term, we know what it's doing. Long term, things become a little bit more problematic with Isaac. Now that it's gaining strength, I actually think that the models will start to coalesce a little bit. I talked about this earlier on Twitter. Weak, disorganized systems actually are very hard to forecast because the center jumps around, and because it's a weak system, it's influenced very easily. If you think about a bobber in a creek or a cork or something small, it can move all over the place. But when you get something large like a big boat and put it in that same creek or stream, it takes a lot more to move it. So the bigger and stronger this thing gets, I know that's scary, it actually is a little bit easier to forecast because then it's all about intensity forecasting as far as eye wall replacement cycles and that kind of thing, the inner workings of the storm, whereas the track becomes a little bit more easier. So as the system moves into the eastern, southeastern Gulf of Mexico here in the next 24 hours, I actually anticipate the forecast track becoming a little bit more concrete with the intensity forecast becoming problematic. And with all this warm water in the Gulf of Mexico, that RI I refer to, it's short for rapid intensification, something we got to watch out for because conditions are quite favorable for things to develop. Now, this is just a quick and dirty look at what's going on right now. I will post updates every day this week as the system gets closer to the Gulf Coast. Obviously, for all my friends and followers on the Gulf Coast, this is important, but in the Carolinas, the Charlotte area specifically, we still have a threat for flooding from this and possibly severe weather depending on the track. So stay tuned. This is going to have an impact through next week all the way into next weekend now. So Labor Day weekend could be impacted not by a hurricane, but by some heavy rain in parts of the Carolinas. Hope you have a great Sunday. Please stay abreast to the situation, especially on the Gulf Coast. If you're not following me, get on Twitter, wxbrad, wxbrad, that's me on Twitter, and my Facebook and Google Plus pages. I hope to post some blog updates starting later tonight and through the day tomorrow.